Hey, everybody, you are tuning in for another live recording of the Freedom Cast podcast, where we talk about how to get, be, and remain free. Tonight, I have with me, woo, my good sis,
How
my
you doing?
good, I'm about to cut up, my good sis, the leading trauma specialist that I
Mm,
know, my, it's her. She's the
my
one,
goodness. Wow.
the incomparable
Mm,
Dominique. Girl,
wow. Cue the applause. Hello. Good to be here. Good to be here.
yes, yes, yes. So,
Yeah. Long time
Dominique and
coming.
I know each other from undergrad. We went to undergrad together, and then we
Okay.
got to know each other even more when she married my best friend, Pastor Tim
Absolutely.
Jones from
Shout out to
Greater
the bay.
Harvest.
Shout out to the bay.
Come on now, Pastor Bay. So,
Pastor Bay.
right. But I mean, now she's my sis. You know what I mean? Like, I love Tim, but I'm like, Dominique's my
Right.
sister. So,
Right. Absolutely.
there's no bridge. It's just we right
Right.
there.
Right.
But so tonight we're gonna be talking about boundary issues that stem from childhood trauma.
Yes.
And like I said, and I wasn't joking, Dominique is a child trauma specialist just in general.
Yes.
Has delved into it, got certified in it, specializes in it. There's no one else that I'd rather be talking to discuss this. So we're just going to give an overview of what trauma is, specifically childhood trauma. But then we know that, or maybe we don't know, but the reality is if childhood trauma is untreated, it turns into adult
Yes.
trauma.
Yes.
So, we're just going to point out some of the signs of trauma and then how those boundary issues kind of come in. So, Dominique,
Absolutely.
please lead us off.
All right. So like I said, it's really good to be here, and to talk about these things because I feel like it's any platform that is given any opportunity to anybody to speak about mental health in any form is really good. So I'm happy that you're doing this, and I hope you continue to do this. So yeah, I'll just jump right into it for the sake of this topic because it's pretty heavy. So trauma. So number one, what is trauma? We know them to be, a plethora of things that kind of happen, whether they're, preconceived things. So, for example, if you're in the war, the first thing people think about as far as trauma is war, military, things of that nature. That is a form of trauma. But there are other forms such as sexual abuse, emotional abuse, verbal abuse, grief, losing someone unexpectedly. You have traumatic grief where you even if you do expect it, it's very hard for you to process. And all these things again can happen at childhood. So we're specifying childhood trauma today. So, but trauma is pretty much any one of those things. I like to kind of break down certain types of trauma. So number one, there is something called acute trauma. That's pretty much just when you have like one single event. Doesn't mean that you're not facing trauma, but maybe you just had that one event. Maybe it was a really bad car accident. Maybe you lost, your mother or your father at a very young age. So you have that one incident that was very powerful, very life changing, altered a lot of your perception and how you view and think of things. So you have that. Then you have another one which is called chronic trauma. This is when you have like a repeated and prolonged type of trauma. So maybe like domestic violence or something that's kind of happening on an ongoing basis, unfortunately. So it pushes into another level where now you're talking about, which everyone probably hears, is fight or flight, kind of that constant fear of, what do I have to do? So it goes into another level of the brain in a sense. And then you have the last one, which is something that a lot of people, this is fairly new, but I encourage people to really look into it, which is complex trauma. So complex trauma is exposure to many different and multiple types of traumatic events. And they're very invasive. So, you have people that maybe have been molested, but then they were also raped. But then they had emotional abuse at home. So just kind of like multiple, but very different sometimes. And sometimes they don't even connect. Just some people that, you ever hear people just say, trouble seems to follow me everywhere I go. There are some people that unfortunately have dealt with multiple forms of trauma in various ways. And so that's pretty much trauma in a nutshell. It's just those things that kind of come in that are invasive. They disregard boundaries. They disregard rules of a person. They kind of happen sometimes out of nowhere, and it's just really hard to kind of process. And they happen from childhood all the way up until who knows until you pass on. It just kind of happens. Life kind of happens. So yeah. So
I
that's
mean, that was such a great overview of trauma. I mean, for those of us who don't really know about it, I think that gave some insight into like what exactly it is, what exactly happens and how we're really affected by it. Like we go through life and things happen and stuff happens to us and we don't even realize
mhm,
that it's stemming from things that happened in our past. It's stemming from that
absolutely.
trauma. I mean, we're noticing repeated relationship issues or everywhere we go. There's an issue that's going on. There's something that's happening. Okay, if
Yeah,
it's happening everywhere we go, then we're the common denominator. You know what I mean? So it's important for us to
hmm
really look at that and see that.
absolutely.
So now, in regard to like some boundary issues that we would see that would stem from
Yeah,
untreated childhood trauma, what would that
yeah.
look like?
All right. So that's a pretty that it's a really broad topic. So because it trauma looks so different and it's processed so different through different people. So you have different cultural differences and you have faith walk differences. So you have so many differences. So I'm gonna go over the general for the sake of time and what I feel like maybe most average people kind of deal with those boundaries. So the first one I want to talk about, and we can just kind of have a conversation about all of these, because they're all pretty good. So the first one I want to talk about is being able to take criticism. So a lot of people that have dealt with trauma in a childhood phase, they have a hard time with receiving no's. They have a hard time with taking criticism. They are very emotional, because what happens is when you don't really, because boundaries and attachment, they kind of work hand in hand. um they work hand in hand. So if you don't have that secure attachment, you don't really get to define and identify what healthy boundaries look like. So if your attachment with your, whoever your primary caregiver was, so if it was mom, dad, foster parent, whoever it may be, if that really looked very chaotic, and 1 minute you can come to them and talk, and then the next minute, you didn't know if you can come to talk, that attachment kind of causes you to really have a very tainted view of what a healthy boundary is, because now the boundary is kind of like, okay, well, did I cross the line here? Well, yeah, talking to someone shouldn't make you feel like you're crossing the line. You expressing yourself should not feel like crossing the line. But for a lot of children, and as they grow up, it kind of shows that when they are shut down, when they are just completely emotionally neglected, it shows in a lot of their communication styles with other people. So the first one I want to talk about is just not being able to receive criticism, constructive criticism. It seems like everything that someone says to you, and it's maybe against something that you believe or against something that you did, it tends to hurt a little bit deeper. It tends to hit the heart just a little bit deeper than maybe someone else. And it takes, so I'm going to talk about two things. So one, boundaries, and two, what it takes to kind of get around that. But that is the first boundary I want to talk about. Just having a hard time receiving what someone may be saying to you. I don't know, Stephanie. I don't know about you, but there are times where someone can say something to me, and it's like, whoa, why'd you have to say it like that? When really they didn't say it any type of way.
Right,
It
right.
was just kind of like, it was a little sharp. So but again, those all come into those basic things of trauma, like triggers, and being self-aware of what those triggers are to you. Maybe the tone maybe set you off a little bit. Maybe the thought of, oh, I'm a burden, may have set you off a certain way. But those are some boundaries that I feel like we need to talk about, because when you look at different settings, whether it's school, whether it's your career, whether it's a normal 9 to 5, whether it's entrepreneurship. In this day and age, we have social media, so comments, and people have positive things to say, they have negative things to say. They're pretty bold with it. I think it's really important to talk about, because we have a lot of children, teenagers, 30-year-olds, 40-year-olds that are still dealing with childhood trauma that they've never processed. So now what is just constructive criticism now feels like,
An attack.
man, right. Like now I'm just getting attacked all over again. And now you kind of relive that trauma all over again. And it's not an attack. So that's the first one. I think that boundary of not being able to kind of receive what someone is giving you. Because we know that love comes in a corrective form. Love can come in many forms. It's not always like peaches and ice cream.
Right.
You gotta grow, and sometimes to grow, you kind of have to tell people, hey, you're doing that wrong. And everybody can't sugarcoat everything for you, so it gets
And
a little hard.
it does. It gets difficult, because it's like if you're trying to correct someone in love, I'm not talking about someone being rude or just like blatantly like disrespectful, but if you know someone and you're trying to correct them in love and they get so offended, I mean, it's very difficult to kind of operate. You don't know how to navigate. And I know for me, like, I don't want to be in any relationship where I have to walk on eggshells. You know what I mean? Like, that's no one wants to be in that space. So I know that I'm thinking, like, okay, if someone had parents who talked to them very harsh, right? Like if they were always criticized when they were
Right.
younger. Like I love my mom, but in there's a lot of ways. I mean,
Yeah.
Mama Jackie was cracking that whip.
Yeah. She always has something to say.
Always, she demanded perfection of us. She's an etiquette
Right.
coach. Like she demanded
Mm,
that of us.
right.
I still put my napkin on my lap now. Like, I mean, back straight. You know what I mean?
Right.
We had to
Hello.
speak proper diction. Like there was no slang in my mother's house,
Mm,
no rap, anything. So she has had very high expectations of us.
yeah.
And sometimes if you feel like you don't meet that, two things happen. One, you just decide, just I'm going to give up all completely. I'm just going to rebel. I'm just going to go the exact opposite.
Absolutely.
Or you're going to try to be such a perfectionist that you just like everything has to
Absolutely.
be in order in place, and that makes it hard for people to be
Absolutely.
around. This is what I'm saying, the boundaries, and I'm talking about myself really, because I'm like,
Right.
when you're held to such a high standard, like everything's like, oh, if I mess up, I'm like,
Yep.
sorry, 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 sorry. I'm like, wait a minute, hold
Absolutely.
on, like I'm human. I
Yeah.
can mess up.
Yeah. I think one of the most common forms of trauma that's so swept under the rug a lot of the time is emotional and verbal abuse.
Definitely.
I think that we are so focused on the sexual abuse and those things because they are really horrible things.
Very.
But the things that happen the most a lot of the time is emotional and emotional neglect and
Yeah.
verbal abuse because we don't know how to communicate. People are just not really good at communicating. We
No,
just kind of suck. It's always kind of like I'm talking and not listening, and then the other person's just like listening to be on guard.
that's right.
So it's really hard. So I think that number one, you had stated something because as we talk about boundaries, and healthy boundaries,
Healthy boundaries.
as we stated before, a little bit before this, I realized that the spectrum. So there's a spectrum of a healthy boundary, and a healthy boundary is it falls in that middle where there's a good balance, right? So there's a good balance of you care about what somebody's saying, you have a healthy level of empathy, but then you have a very healthy level of being able to speak your mind as well. It's a really good, healthy balance of both. Um, what tends to happen in childhood trauma is you kind of fall on very total opposite ends of the spectrum. So you're either so empathetic, like I said, so you're such an empath that you start to worry, and this is another unhealthy boundary, that you start to worry about what somebody else feels about you or what their desire is for you to be like, and you want to just make sure that you're so perfect for whatever person or for whatever setting. um and you kind of lose yourself. You
Yeah.
lose everything about you. And we know as Christians that God literally made us the way He made us for a reason. I mean, He's very intentional about the personality that He chose to put in each and the characters He's been. He's very strategic and intentional about everything that He does for us. So when you are so wrapped up in, what this person may think about you or how is this going to come off, or that's usually a true sign of some form of verbal or physical abuse, because again, this goes back to when you were in the trauma, you kind of do what you need to do to survive. And sometimes to do that, it's a camouflage. It's to be whatever you need to be in that moment so this doesn't happen again. So if you have a woman or a man who was getting physically abused, if what would stop the hit is to, bow down at their feet and not say anything, that's what you do. Because you don't want to get hit, of course. So you do what you feel like you need to do to survive. So, and then we kind of take that mentality in every setting. So
Apply
we
it
take that
everywhere.
into our careers, right? We take that into, so now we have people that are on the job that deal with anxiety in the workplace because now they feel like I have to be perfect. I can't have sick days. I can't have vacation days. I can't do these things. I can't mess up like anybody else. I can't make a mistake on a piece of paper. I can't do these things because I'm gonna get fired. I'm gonna lose my job. The worst is gonna happen.
Yep.
Um, and again, so it's you have that end of the spectrum. Um, then you have this sense of the spectrum where it's like, I'm not trusting anybody. I don't care what anybody got to say. I'm not trusting nobody. You a liar. You a liar. You gonna hit me today. You're gonna hit me tomorrow. So you have that type of, that end of the spectrum, and that can be dangerous too because you miss out on so many opportunities because
So
of the
many.
sense of fear. And that fear, and the thing is, you can't even say it's fear because you don't want anyone to know it's fear. You don't want anyone to know that it's fear and that it's a bit of sadness. And you don't want anyone to know that. You want them to see strong and strength. So what happens is now, not only are you dealing with the fact that you feel like, kind of you can't trust anyone, but now you're putting on this facade, this mask to kind of say, hey, although inside I truly just want to talk to everybody in the world and really get this out, and I'm just looking for that one person I can talk to, but now it's kind of like, I'm strong. And what happens is when you come off and that's the standard that you give, then everybody around you is going to assume, oh, she's okay. Oh, he's good. That's just how they are. That's strong. When really deep down you are crying. You are trying to cry out for help, but no one can see past what you're showing them because most people are going. We know you by the fruit that you bear, in a
That's
sense,
it.
right? So it's kind of like whatever you give. If you're giving me a deceitful fruit, I mean, I can only go by what you show me. So that's another part of the spectrum that I feel like we tend to kind of fall on. So the healthy part would be to have a really good diet of being able to listen, being able to care enough to understand that, okay, there's some things in me that needs to change. Maybe I do need to change my tone. Maybe I do need to change, how blunt I may be. Maybe I do need to change how I'm perceiving this information because someone doing something to you and your thought process is, oh, well, you reminded me of my dad when he talked to me, crazy when I was 5. Okay, but I wasn't trying to do that. I was just trying to ask you what you wanted for dinner. I didn't know that. I'm
Right.
sorry.
You're
And then what
triggered.
exactly you're triggered. And then if you're not self aware, what'll happen is now you will become this word toxic is always used a lot of the time. And I hate to use this word, but it is true. Sometimes we have been in toxic situations so much that now we become the toxic one.
That's
So
right.
now we're showing this in our friendships, in our relationships, and marriages, and how we deal with our employees. If you're an entrepreneur, your peers, your coworkers, you start to become this toxic person, this person that can't, no one can talk to you. No one can say anything. Everyone has to walk on eggshells around you. They feel like they have to be whatever it is you want them to be
Yep.
so that they can maintain a relationship. It's really hard. I know I'm talking on, but I love
Talk
trauma.
on. Talk on. That's why
I
I have
love
you on.
trauma.
Look, you're not talking too much because you're helping somebody,
Yeah,
many bodies
right.
because and like
Many
you know what
bodies.
I'm saying, many bodies. And because we were talking about this before, before we had logged on, like some of us don't know what trauma looks like.
Yeah,
We've normalized it. Oh, this is just how
yeah,
I've always been. I would say the same thing about like anxiety. Like we've normalized it. Oh,
yeah.
I just I always get like this when something happens. That doesn't mean that it's okay just because we've
Right,
normalized it. So just
right.
because we've learned how to adjust and to live with our trauma doesn't mean it's okay. So this is the
Exactly.
point where we say, okay, this is what we're seeing. This is exactly what it is. When you name a thing, then you
Yes,
can get that thing out of there. If it's unnamed,
absolutely.
if it's unclaimed, if it's we don't acknowledge it.
Absolutely.
If we keep it under that rug, then it's like, okay, I really
Yeah.
cannot get this thing out of here because I have not even acknowledged the big elephant in the room. A lot of
Hmm.
us are, just progressing through life, and I like what you mentioned that. Okay, so it stems from childhood, but then we'll apply those same things to our job, to our friend
Yeah.
circle, How many of us just keep moving from friend circle to friend circle, not able
Right.
to make any real attachments because we're afraid that someone will leave us? Like, let's say
Right.
we had a parent who abandoned us. I mean, this is the reality of it.
Yeah.
We see these things happening in our life. We don't understand what it is. We're here to expose the root of it. And the only way
Exactly.
you can pull up the root is if you look at it and see it. Some of it
Absolutely.
hurts, right? Some of it's
Absolutely.
painful. Some of it's like, I don't want
Yeah.
to talk about that because it's painful. But in order for us to get healed, we have to go through a little bit of pain.
You have
So I
to.
love that, we'll apply that to every area. I'm like, listen, you see people just jumping and hopping from relationship. Okay, romantic, platonic, everywhere.
Yeah.
They're going, they're
Yes.
hopping. They don't lay down any roots. And I'm like, wait a minute, where's it stem from? It stems from
Right.
abandonment when you were younger. Okay, someone left. That doesn't mean that everybody's gonna leave, but we have tricked our
Exactly.
mind. The mind is a fickle
Yeah.
place, man. You
Oh
already
yeah.
know. We've
Oh
tricked our
yes.
minds and we've said, everybody's going to do this. Now I've applied this layer of trauma. I see my life through a lens of trauma. We can't live
Right.
like that. There's no way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think to get into those healthy boundaries that we're looking for,
Yeah.
um, there's a form of trauma. One of my favorite types of trauma, if you're a child or if there's a trauma focused therapy. There are trauma focused therapies that we use, and of course, depending on the age bracket that you fall in, and sometimes they're very specific to maybe a sexual abuse or PTSD for military, but there are a lot of therapists out here that are very much trained in a very trauma focused form of therapy that I think is important. And we'll talk about that later. But one of the things I wanted to touch on as we're talking about this is some people that are watching now or soon to watch later, they'll still be dealing with trauma, meaning not just reliving trauma in their mind. Some people are still living in their trauma.
My.
Some people are still being abused by the same person. Some there are cultural differences. So I've done a couple of different studies on just different cultures. The West Indian culture and some Hispanic cultures, and us. And in those cultures where you have a lot of very family oriented morals and values in a sense, kind of like you need to certain regions of Africa even they have this mentality of the parent feels like they've done everything that they can to make sure that their child gets what they need. So now, because they've done that, it is now the child's job to make sure that this parent is good. And that means to literally deny yourself of certain things that you may want to
Girl.
try to go for. There's a lot. So when you have a couple of different things, so when you have a culture that's kind of on your back, right? So this culture, and that can look like different things, but when you have this culture, how do I kind of break away from this so that I can not feel so bad in my mind when it comes to me just wanting to, start a business, Like I don't want to be a doctor, mom. I want to sell mirrors. I love it. This is what I love to do, and it's really hard. The reason why I brought up that trauma focused therapy is because just simple some things that you can do now, even if you are not in therapy and you're on the borderline of like maybe I don't really want therapy or I'm thinking about it, but you're sitting here looking at this conversation, right? I think one of the things first is to realize that anytime you have dealt with any form of trauma or when you deal with this pressure or burden to meet a certain standard for certain people, I think that the first thing is to really identify your thoughts, those core beliefs that you have about yourself, um, because if you find that your core beliefs are kind of wrapped up in, oh, I feel like I am unimportant because my mom feels like I'm unimportant, or I feel like I'm just absolutely nothing or invisible to the world because my parents, or I'm not living up to the expectation of what my culture feels like I should be. Um, you have to attack those core beliefs to the root. So again, you can't, you can take a Tylenol all day long, but until you get to that root, it's not going to change. So I think that it's very important to realize that when you start to notice certain beliefs that you have about yourself, even if you just write down a piece of paper and just write down some things that you feel about yourself. I feel, smart. I feel ugly. I feel whatever it is, you write these down and you start to kind of analyze, okay, why am I thinking this way? What is the thought? Why is this thought, where's this thought coming from? What is the feeling attached to this thought? Because it's very important. Thoughts, feelings, and actions, we all learn, they all work together.
They
Your
do.
thoughts, your feelings, your actions, they all work together. So when you're thinking something, so let's say you think, let's say we use this example all the time. Let's say you've been attacked by a dog. You think when you see a dog, oh my gosh, I'm going to be attacked. So the feeling automatically is what? I'm going to be scared. I'm going to be anxious. I'm going to be nervous. And the action is either I'm going to fight this dog or I'm going to run away from this dog. But the point is, it's all influenced by that thought, that belief. And when that belief is tainted by a mom that abandoned you, like you said, or an uncle that may have molested you, or a father that just was not emotionally there, because even men a lot of the times do not know how to tap into emotion because they have not been showcased that that's okay. They haven't been told, they haven't been given an example that that's okay. So now we have to hold it in. We have to hold it in. We have to hold it in. So now you have a bunch of men suffering in silence. And now they feel like, they're not worthy. They feel like, what they're doing is not enough. They have to meet this standard and criteria, and they feel like this is not enough. And now you suffer in silence. And now the feeling is, this sadness or this sense of, man, I'm not a man. And then the action starts to showcase in different things. You can
Yeah.
start to abuse yourself. You can start to be addicted. You find men emotionally eating. You find them binging. I mean, let's not just, because a lot of people automatically go to women, but men go through this too.
Let's talk
Trauma
about
hits,
it.
trauma hits everyone. Trauma hits everyone. So I think it's important that you really identify those core beliefs. So if there's anything that I can leave as far as just starting off therapy for someone that may be kind of sitting like going back and
On the
forth like a
fence.
seesaw, right, like on the fence. Start off with just kind of identifying what you are believing in yourself. So when you look in the mirror, what do you see? I am smart, I am pretty, I'm not enough, I'm not perfect. Um, find those thoughts out, because when we start to identify, we get so caught up with just the feeling. So I'm sad, and then we stop. There's a thought attached to that feeling.
Always.
There's something attached to that feeling, right? It goes back even in scripture when it talks about, not to be conformed as well, but to be renewed and transformed by the renewing of your mind. There's a reason why it says to not be renewed by your heart, not renewing your heart so that you can be transformed, or it's your mind, because there's a thought process of however you're looking and perceiving something. This goes back to what we were saying about criticism. If you're perceiving that this criticism is an attack, you're going to feel attacked. And what's going to happen is you're most likely going to attack back. So now you just have two people arguing when it could have been a very healthy conversation
That's right.
that you grew from. But your perception is so wrong. Your perception is so tainted because of trauma. So yeah.
Yeah, because of that trauma. And it's like how we see ourselves. So the trauma issues, it really coats our own eyes, like how we see life, how we see ourselves. And I like what you were mentioning. I mean, you bucking up into mindfulness. Like, where does
Right.
this thought stem from? In Proverbs 23, it's talking about, as a man thinketh,
Right.
so is he. Now, that was the KJV version. That's how I learned it as a child. But
Wow.
anywho, as a man thinketh, so is he.
Right.
Okay, that applies to everybody. Whatever we're thinking, that's what we become. And so, right, where's the origin of this thought?
Exactly.
What's the root of this thought? How did this thought come to be? If we're mindful, if we're paying attention to our thoughts, right, our core thoughts. I'm
Right.
thinking of the three core thoughts that I have. If any of them, and anyone, not just me, if we think of the
Right.
three core thoughts that we have,
Hmm.
is it a negative voice that we're hearing?
Right.
Is it a positive voice that we're hearing? Because
Absolutely.
that determines, like, okay, what we're dealing with. Did someone in our childhood or in our teenagehood or young adulthood, did
Right.
someone say something negative to us and we put that on us? Did we wear that on us as a cloak now? And everywhere we
Right.
go, it's just like that's the word that keeps going in our minds. but
Right.
we're in control. We're in control of our own thoughts. People are like, oh, I can't control my own thoughts. Well, I was like, well, who's controlling them? Oh, I
Yeah.
can't control my own actions. Well, I want to speak to the one who's controlling them. Is it the trauma
Absolutely.
that has the reins?
Absolutely.
Right? Is it the trauma that's driving the car? And
Right.
a lot of us have the trauma driving the car. And that
Mm-hmm.
car is swerving all over the road like a drunk driver, to
It
be honest, because
is.
trauma doesn't care anything about us. It wants what it wants. It wants to feel how it wants to feel. And it wants to derail us because it wants to keep us stuck, right? So in
Yeah.
that PTSD, like, I'm gonna keep you stuck right here.
Mm-hmm.
You can't move on. Now we're in like cement again. We can't progress. Everything we get into, we end up self sabotaging, because that's
Right.
another boundary issue. Where we're talking about self
Absolutely.
sabotage, it stems from things in our past where, okay, something didn't work out in our past. I'm a product of a divorced parent. I mean,
Right.
my parents got divorced when I was 11 going on 12. Like, that
Mm.
stuck with me for a long time. That
Yeah.
was a catalyst to a lot of my negative thinking, but it keeps you stuck. But it's like, okay, when you learn how to get over the hump, it matters who you have around you. It matters if you know your identity.
Yeah.
You were talking about earlier, and I was about to be like, yeah, when you get into these traumatic situations, your identity just melds with whoever you're with,
Yeah.
whether that's friends, whether that's romantic. So you put on
Yeah.
all these masks, and it's like, well, every time you're thinking like, well, my mom didn't like how I was, or my dad
Yeah.
didn't like how I was, my aunt, like, let's not let aunts and uncles and older family members off the
Right.
hook, because everyone said some hurtful things, and everyone has
Right.
their part to play. Oh, you're
Yeah.
doing that. Oh, you know
Right.
what I mean? Come on, we know
Right.
about shady shit.
That grandma had be like, "Oh, you didn't look so big the last time I saw." Oh, grandma.
Yeah, yeah, oh, you're getting fat, or just
Right.
saying something rude. I'm
Yeah.
like, well,
Okay.
okay, cool.
For
You know what
real.
I mean? I'm like, come on, like, this is hurtful stuff that we're saying, and we don't realize the road that it's about to open up
Mhm.
to us, to our children. And then when you were talking to Dominique, I was thinking that we're suffering from not our own childhood trauma, but our parents' childhood trauma, and then their
Yeah.
parents' childhood trauma, and we could
Exactly.
trace it all the way back
Exactly.
to where our feet hit the shores
Exactly.
of America.
Absolutely.
If we're really talking about it, we can trace
Absolutely.
this childhood trauma
For
all the
real.
way back, where we don't have
Yeah.
families together, where we have
Yeah.
men who were separated from their wives and children, who were emasculated, who were whipped
Right.
in front of everyone, who were
Right.
stripped of their culture and their strength. You know what
Mhm.
I mean? That's what we see
Oh
is
yeah.
going on. I'm like, so we're not just reaping the traumatic, unfortunate
Yeah.
events of our own trauma, but of our ancestors' trauma. I'm
Mm.
like, come on, this goes all the way down the line. But at one certain point, we have to say, this stops with me,
Yeah.
right? We have to
You
make
have
that
to get there.
declaration. Yeah,
You have to get to that
yeah,
point. And you can get to that point. I know that sometimes it feels like, oh my gosh, it's just always gonna be like this. Like, this is just life. But no, it can change. Um, the variable of life is there, right? Life is a
yeah.
variable. We don't know what's gonna hit us. The constant is you. The constant is you. And what happens is, in a tainted picture, that it becomes that life is the constant and we're the variable. So now we switch up, we switch up, we switch up. No, you can be very constant. You can be very assured in yourself. You can be so self aware about yourself, um, that no one can tell you. No one would be able to tell you, like, oh, you feel this way, or it wouldn't bother you because you're so secure in yourself, and it takes time. It takes time, but it takes time with the work. It doesn't just, time goes by and I'm just sitting here. No, you have to put in the work. And that can be in many forms. Therapy is definitely come on, the abuse stop me. Therapy is definitely one of the ways that you can get to that point. Connecting yourself. I always tell people that a lot of the things that people deal with as far as like trust, having hope, like those major things, the only way to kind of break that type of thinking, when it comes to like not trusting people or not hoping, is literally to do it. It's literally to hope for something. It's literally to trust somebody. Um, when you have so much childhood trauma and it goes, like we talked about, undiagnosed or undetected, sometimes undetected,
Undetected,
um,
man.
not even undiagnosed, just undetected. And it goes on. What happens is you start to see now really, really big changes in the diagnosis. So you start to maybe even see, your depression. You start to see your anxieties. You start to see sometimes you start to see even OCD. It depends on the trauma. There are some people that have serious medical traumas, um, and that makes them believe that anything that they touch will cause them to be back in a place that they were, and they
God.
don't want to go through it. So they will avoid touching anything. They won't go anywhere, and they are literally trapped in their minds because if I touch something, what if I rub my face? And then if I rub my face, what if I'm allergic to this? But you see the train of thought? The train of thought is always negative. It's never positive. Um, so TD Jakes had said something one time, and it stuck with me forever. Um, he said, depression, it tends to focus on your past. He said, and anxiety tends to focus on your future. Now, if
Yeah.
you battle with depression and anxiety, that means what? You're never present. You are never present.
Oh my
So you
gosh.
are not even living in the reality of the fact that there's someone in front of you giving you love. They're just showing you love. They just pushing it
Dominique,
all out there. Take that. Get this money. Get it. And
take
and
that. Take that.
you're right. Just take it. But you can't. You're not present enough to see this. You are either focused on what's gonna happen if I lose this person, or you're so focused on I've been in so much pain that this can't be real. Like you're
Jesus.
just not here. You're not present. You're not here. So when you are not present and you're focused on these things, it makes it really hard to kind of see yourself the way you're supposed to see yourself. It makes it really hard to see the relationship that you're in as the relationship you're in and not the relationship you had with John or Keisha. It makes it real hard to realize that you're in a relationship with Ashley. But Keisha is who you're thinking about. John is who you're thinking about because you're stuck in your past or you're stuck in something that didn't even happen in your future yet. You cannot be present. And
There's no way.
I think it's so important to talk about, even when we talk about faith, even when we talk about being Christians. Um, the Bible tells us to not to literally to cast all our anxieties onto him, right? To not even worry about tomorrow, right? And then he goes to say, the old man is done away with, right? So what is he telling you to do? Focus on your now. Because all you can do is focus on your now. The past has already happened. There's nothing you can do to change it. There's nothing that you can do to for it to have a solution. I know we look at these movies and they have time machines and stuff. We can't do
Not
it.
real. Not
We can't
real.
do it. We can't do it. You can't go back in time. You can't fix this. And your future hasn't happened yet. So you're so focused on what the future may look like based upon your past, and not realizing that there's a step that you forgot that can alter that future. There's an alter. I realize that I always got to go to the scriptures, girl. You know that Jesus presently. You realize that Jesus in His present dealt with the past and the future.
My.
In His present, my God, we have to be so present and mindful in our situations so that we can grow in this. Be present when you're talking to your significant other, your spouse. Be present in the moment and hear what they're saying. Try to challenge yourself that when those thoughts start to come that say, oh, he attacking me, she attacking me again, challenge those thoughts. Someone told this to me, and I'm going to take it with me forever now. Take the high thought. You have a high thought and you have a low thought. Take the high thought.
Take the
So if
high
you
thought.
thought, oh, I'm getting attacked, you can change that thought and say, you know what? This person really loves me, and this is why they're telling me this. This is why they're telling me this. Because everyone is not like my mom. Everyone is not like my dad. Every car is not going to hit me on the expressway. You have to challenge those thoughts. And that's only going to happen if you're present. You're not going to challenge them in your past, and you can't challenge them in your future because you're not there yet. So in your present moment, you take a deep breath and challenge those thoughts. Challenge them because they're stemming from somewhere, and they're stemming from a place that it's already happened, or something that you're predicting is going to happen. So you have to be present. It's your presence that's gonna alter your future, and you learn from your past so that you can definitely be present. So that trauma that you face, someone preached the word, and I tend to now look at my trauma as a trial. I try to really change my perception, and look at certain traumas and things that have happened as a trial, as a way for God to push me into another level, for me to learn something, for me to grow from something. Um, and if I keep my mind on a higher thought when it comes to my trauma, I realize that the feelings attached to it. Now, what I used to be scared of, I'm ready to fight. I'm ready to learn from. I'm ready to receive from. And now my actions are okay. I'm gonna do this thing that I said I'm gonna do, and I'm not gonna let anyone stop me. My actions start to show in that. I start to see myself hoping again. Um, yeah, I started to see myself hoping again. When I was in a very dark place, I had to I had to fight these thoughts so that I can hope again. So I can hope again. So um challenge that thought, and the only way to do that is to be present. It's to be present. And sometimes you need therapy to help you be present. Sometimes you
Yeah.
need mindful coaches like yourself to help a person be present so that they can build these healthy boundaries, so that they won't keep repeating the same cycle, because they're repeating the same cycle only because they're still there in their minds, right? Trauma is the symptoms of trauma are reliving an experience, right? They're even when you're not thinking about it, those thoughts penetrate your mind, and you can take dominion of those
Come
thoughts.
on.
You can take dominion of those thoughts. They don't run you. They're there, but they don't run you. It reminds me of like your body, your arm. Your arm just not gonna move itself and pick up the cup. You have to take authority and say, you're gonna pick up this
Absolutely.
cup here and I'm gonna drink. You 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 tell it. The brain is the function, and you tell it what you want it to do. I want to pick up this cup today. It's the same thing. You can take dominion of negative thoughts. You can take dominion of suicidal ideations. You can take dominion of those things, but you
Hallelujah.
have to be present. You can't keep hiding or shying away from it, and you can't keep um, looking to your future and only forecasting negative. That's not going to change anything. You have to challenge those thoughts. So, yeah, that I think that's a big thing we need to talk about too.
I
I
think
think you should
so.
just do a mindfulness moment. Sometimes a
Listen.
mindfulness Monday moment where just every Monday you just have a moment where they just come in front of the camera and just say, okay, breathe in, breathe out, and because it's real, you're on
It's
the go so
real.
much, you can't pause and just okay. You don't get to, sometimes you just don't get to do that. In trauma, your mind is to always be going. You're always on guard. You're always, and you don't get a chance to just sit still for a moment and just say, you know what? I'm actually in a pretty safe environment. Like you don't get to pause and look at your surroundings. You don't get to pause and see who's around you. You don't get to pause and touch the things around you. You're on the go. So
Yeah.
now, when you're present, you can actually look around and say, you know what? I'm not in that car that I was in. I'm not there. I'm sitting in a car, and I have probably the most safest driver because my husband he is the slowest driver in America. That
He
man drives
is.
about
He,
20
he
miles
drive like a he drive like a grandpa.
because I have been in accidents, right? It doesn't matter because my mind is I'm reliving. Hold on, what's gonna happen? I'm not present, and if I was present, I would see. I can look at the speed, the speed, and see 20 miles. I can see my seatbelt. I can see everybody else in the car just breathing, relaxing, and
Right.
maybe I can allow that environment to taint me. Maybe I can allow that environment to change a thought, but it comes with being present so that you can build that sense of healthy thinking, because that's also a healthy boundary. Healthy thinking.
It really is. You know what I mean? And it's so funny. I was thinking of doing like mindful Mondays and wellness
Yeah.
Wednesdays. I mean, I really do want to get into that because it's such a process to have to retrain the brain. I mean, I feel like this whole year I've been hearing that the brain is a computer and
Yeah.
we have to rewire it and process it and
Absolutely.
program it really the way
Absolutely.
we need it to. When the Bible speaks about arresting and taking every thought into captivity,
Yeah.
right, into the authority of Christ, and a lot of us aren't doing that. You know what I mean? We're
No.
not taking those thoughts captive. It doesn't matter what thought comes in, whether it's good or bad. You grab it, you
Right.
assess it. If it's good, you let it run free. If it's
Yeah.
bad, get it, kick
Kick
it
that
on out
thing
of
out
there.
the door. Right. You
Bye.
got to go.
Out. See you later.
You
You know
gotta
what I
go.
mean? Got to
Yeah.
go. So, I mean, I think that's really important. And unfortunately, a lot of us don't want to do the process. And I'm saying us, not you. I'm right there. And I mean, just because we're, therapists and social workers and counselors, we go through the same things. Like we're
Yeah.
humans, like, you know what I mean? But we've had to train ourselves to take every thought. If I feel a thought coming in from my childhood that I'm not
Yeah.
good enough, maybe I wasn't
Yeah.
affirmed enough. So if I feel that thought coming in, I don't just
Yeah.
watch it come in and destroy my house. That's what
Yeah.
we're doing. We're letting a robber come in and utterly destroy our house. I mean, tear up our couch, knock
Absolutely.
all our dishes down, leave the water running,
Yeah.
turn the heat up on high. Like we're
Mm.
letting our thoughts come in and destroy our mind, and we're just sitting there watching it. No, we've been given the authority and the power to
Yeah.
tell that thing, get out now,
Absolutely.
not get right, because bad
Yeah.
thoughts are rooted in bad thoughts. That's just it. That
Yeah.
bad thought has to get out, and it's not the problem that they come in. They're gonna come in, but it's how
Yeah.
we direct them, how we flow them in and out. Like we can see a
Yeah.
bad thought, usher it right on out. Okay, there's the
Right.
door.
Right.
Get out,
Absolutely.
no matter what happens. And I think just putting the power and control back in our hands, but ultimately it's God's hands for those of us who are in the faith. You know what I
Right.
mean? We
Absolutely.
know, we have recognized, we come to the understanding that we cannot do this on our own, that
Yeah.
there's no way that we have the strength and the power to grab up every thought unless we are submitted to Christ, because
Yeah.
he's the one who takes the thoughts captive. Any
Right.
thought that tries to exalt itself above his knowledge, it's not saying our knowledge, it's his knowledge. So
Yeah.
our knowledge is limited. if
Yeah.
if that thought is coming in and it is not lining up with who God says we are, bye, get out.
Bye-bye.
You know what I mean? That's how we do it. And I
Absolutely.
love what you talk about, being present.
Absolutely.
My God, we have to be
We
present.
have to be
We are
present.
stumbling over our past, we're stumbling over our future, right? That has not happened yet. If we live in the present moment, if we're looking at right where we are,
We can
you are
take
absolutely
authority
right. We can take authority and we
in
can
the
say,
present moment.
I am going to now celebrate my past because it made me, it
Mhm.
created me to be who I am. It built me up. It made me strong.
Yeah.
Then I'm going to also take authority of my future to make sure
Right.
that the childhood trauma that I experienced, that the ones coming behind
Right.
me will not be experiencing, and that I'm no longer walking in like the
Absolutely.
footsteps of trauma, because that's what I see, like the trauma, just like that shield, that lens, that film over our eyes. So everything
Yeah.
we look at with trauma. You can't live life like that. Like there's no way.
Absolutely
That's no
not.
way to experience the abundant life that we were promised. Like that's
Mm-mm.
what we should be walking in.
Right. And then I think the sense of control that tries to creep into, this, because this is another boundary, unhealthy thing that we tend to do when you have childhood trauma. You want to control everything. You want to literally,
Trey.
you, here, you
To
want
the
to
left, to the left.
hello, you want to control everything. You want your hand in every aspect of not only your life, but the person
Yes.
that you're with life. You want your hand in, you want it in everything. You
My
you
God,
just have
today.
to take control of everything. Because I'm the only one that can do this correctly. I'm the only one that's gonna do my vision correctly. I'm the only one not realizing that the help is here. Help is here.
Help is here.
And it's there. So that's another thing. This sense of like, I'm gonna take control. I'm gonna be in control today. Um, Realize that when it comes to Christ, He made nothing to be independent but Himself. Everything else is dependent on something. He's the only independent mass of whatever that's there. Not us.
Come on.
We are a body of Christ that depends on the arm, depends on the shoulder depends on. I mean, we're dependent on everything. So this, and it just goes to show that you need help. You need help. You need to be connected, and a lot of times you won't be able to connect if that communication was horrible in your past. That attachment and abandonment issues are there. Rejection is there. People that tend to deal with social anxiety, I did a study. Statistically, they show that when they people that have social anxiety usually is because of two things. One, bullying. So they tend to think that every situation with a group of people will tend to be the same way. Or two, verbal and emotional abuse as a child. Having a parent that was over criticizing them, um, having a parent in some cultures, it would say, show a form of character of jealousy towards that child. So there are so many things, but it just goes to show that social anxiety in most cases stems from a childhood trauma. It really does. When you look at these ADHD, statistics and numbers, the reason why trauma focused therapy became so big is because we're starting to see that a lot of these ADHD symptoms are very, very similar to trauma reactions. So a lot of our kids are not necessarily just having problems with inattentiveness or hyperactivity, they're suffering in trauma. There's trauma there. And if we as 40-year-olds, 30-year-olds can't even get our trauma together, what makes you think a 9-year-old will? What makes they don't even know the word anxiety sometimes. They don't even know that word. I've dealt with kids as young as 3, 2, 4 years old that have been in domestic violence situations, and they can't say that. The only way that they were able to come to that was they had a play therapist that allowed them to draw, and they drew what they saw. They played with dolls and showed what they saw. Or you see a teacher maybe report something because they see a child that is interacting with the child based on what they saw at home. A lot of our trauma, it does come from a childhood. A lot of our perception comes from that first attachment that you ever have. That first attachment that you ever have is the standard moving forward. It's the standard moving forward for you. You don't know anything at 3, 4, 6. You don't know anything at that age. Your mom, dad, whoever's in your house, that's your world. That's what you see, right? It's so big as mom can tell you, the sky's pink. So you go to everybody saying the sky's pink, you know? And I don't care what you have to say about it because my mama said that the sky's pink.
My mama told me that the sky's pink.
Right. So
and we'll
I don't
fight
care.
and we'll
Right.
fight somebody if they say it's not.
Hello? Right. But see what healthy boundaries even in parenting looks like is to allow that child to come to some form of opinion of their own. They used to say, let the baby draw. Let the baby, your grandmama, let the baby do. Because sometimes you need to allow that to come out. And then when you need to redirect. But don't shut it down because, this is what I said and what I said goes. Because sometimes that sense of communication, it shows in a lot. Either one, they become that form of communicator, so what I say goes. Or two, they don't know how to be assertive in their communication. They don't know how to say what they really feel. They just take what everyone feels, and it's really hard for them to make decisions because now they need someone to kind of tell them what to do. They need confirmation all the time. That's really hard. That's really hard because you're kind of living a life for other people, and it's really hard to do when you have different opinions every day.
It is. You turn into a chameleon.
Yeah.
You're one way with this group and one way with another, and there's really no sense of identity.
Mm-mm.
And then what I'm thinking too is like those children who grew up into adults, they have internalized everything, and that childhood trauma now manifests in the physical, right? So we have stomach aches, we have
Mhm.
cancer. Come on now, we
Mhm.
have cancer, we have stomach aches,
Stress. Yeah. Look,
right?
and then we're not even talking about the fact that when we have these feelings of sadness, like I said, we start to emotionally eat. So now we have obesity. Now we have diabetes because maybe you just want to feel good in the moment. So you
You
eat
need the
a lot of sweets.
sugar.
You
Oh
eat the
my
sugar,
gosh.
right? You have people that can't sleep. So now you have insomnia, which we already know if you're not getting proper rest, your body needs time to reset.
Sure.
So it shows in the physical in so many different ways. It shows in so much. It has a stomach ache. A child can't say, I have a stomach. I don't know what this is, right? I don't feel okay. I don't know what the feeling is, but I don't feel okay. They call it. There's a book for children that says, you got the tinglies in your stomach. Maybe when you're taking a
Tinglies.
test, you got the
Mhm.
tinglies in your stomach. When you see for teenagers, they'll say you see a girl, you like, yeah, the tinglies in your stomach. For the preteens, because we're trying to make it relatable to them. But the point is, these symptoms are showing. They're showing. We think it's something else. A lot of the time, It is trauma.
It's trauma. And it's like when these symptoms come up, okay, it's not the problem that they're there, it's that now they're derailing our lives. We can't even,
Right,
if we think about going to stand in front of an audience or something, like those tinglies like stop us, they immobilize us, like we're
right,
frozen. I mean, I think that's the biggest thing, because it's like problems are gonna happen. I mean, the Bible tells us that we're promised some rough
right.
days. Like that's
Huh,
just a reality,
hello?
it just, but Jesus tells us not to worry because he's overcome the world. But we know the problems are going to be there, right? So we'll have the problems, we'll have the issues, but it's like when those issues, when those problems cause us not to be able to live a healthy life, cause us not to be able to have healthy relationships,
Right,
not to stay in one place. We just keep moving like a nomad.
right,
Like there's a place that we have to come to where it says, I know I need help. And I think it's really important for us to be around some people who will tell us that, right?
right,
Because sometimes we don't know. Sometimes we don't have the knowledge. We filled up all the students. Now the buzzwords are anxiety, PTSD, I have
right,
depression, suicidal
right.
thoughts. I'm not discrediting that because our kids are going through that. But if
Yeah,
we fill them up with the buzzwords and we don't tell them the real knowledge behind it, and if we're also
right,
not telling the parents, we're doing a
right,
disservice to
right.
everybody because now all the kids know and the parents are still like, you're just being so
What?
and so. You know what I mean? We have to.
Exactly.
It's a lack of balance that's there. But I'm just thinking like I'm just thinking of the things that I've seen and even what I've went through myself. You know what I mean? Like, y'all, you're not talking to people who haven't been through traumatic issues. We've both
Yeah.
been through childhood traumatic issues
Mhm.
that have happened and we
Yeah.
didn't let it stop us. And even if it stopped us for a while, right? So whoever's out there listening, even if your trauma stopped you for a while, like let's take tonight to say, I am not going to let my trauma stop me
Absolutely.
anymore. Right. So we're
Absolutely.
shining the light on it. Darkness likes that, oh man, there's no light
Yeah.
here.
No
we
one
we
can see
shine,
me.
no one
Yeah,
can
I
see
like
me.
that.
It loves that, it dwells in that. We shine the light in the darkness so that thing has to flee. So now it's like, okay, i'm exposed I'm exposed to what's going on. I see what's
Yeah.
happening. Now I have another choice. Do I stay here stuck or do I move on? There's help, there's
Right.
assistance, there's therapeutic things you can go through. One of
Yeah.
my favorite modalities of therapy is narrative therapy, and
Yeah.
specifically
Yes.
play
Yes. Yes.
narrative therapy.
Yeah. Narrative
So,
therapy is great.
yeah. So, when I was dealing with kids and having to use like play narrative therapy,
Hmm.
we separated the problem from them. So
Yeah.
if they have a temper tantrum, if they have a bad attitude, if there's anger, we separated it from them so that you
Yeah.
named your anger. We gave it a name, we drew it, you know what I mean? So
Right.
that when that thing comes on you, we don't identify with our trauma anymore. It's not our
Right.
identity. We shed that.
Yes.
That's what happens too. We
Yes.
wear our trauma. And sometimes that becomes something we boast about. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like our trauma is something we boast about.
Right.
What stemmed from it, the results of it, how it shaped our
Yeah.
character. Sometimes we do that. But if we
Yeah.
separate ourselves from the trauma, if we say, this is what happened to me, this is not me,
Yeah.
this is not what defines me,
Yeah.
then we can say, I put the trauma here and I'm going to keep walking on. Okay, it's not an easy process. It's something that we have to keep at. Do we have the
Mhm.
stamina and the courage to keep at it?
Yeah.
That's where we see a lot of the things fall down, where it's like, okay, I
Mhm.
know what's going on. I see what's happening. Here I have the tools, but I don't really want to do the work to get it done. We have to decide to do the work.
Yeah. The biggest thing is avoidance. That I think that's one
Ooh,
of the biggest symptoms ever that you'll ever see when it comes to anybody with trauma, right? Avoidance. You use whatever to avoid the feeling. You use whatever to avoid or get the thoughts away real quickly. Um, and you can't keep doing that because sometimes avoidance works, right? Avoidance works for a time. It works
for a
for
time.
for a time. It does work. You drink a little something something, you feel good, great. You keep yourself busy enough and you work
Oh,
all the
girl.
time.
Oh.
It works. It works a little bit. So sometimes you have to. One of the biggest things I do with anyone, no matter what the age, I go over avoidance. I go over avoidance because I want you to kind of weigh these things. I want you to kind of come up with what are the pros and cons of this of avoidance. What benefit is it for you to avoid, and what negative do you see when you avoid, and which one is it? Usually they tend to see you have some that's still like well right now it's working for me, but you tend to see a lot of negative, and that pushes me to kind of let them see and kind of come to terms for themselves that maybe this is a time where avoiding is not really good. Maybe this is a time where you're starting to open your eyes and see that you cannot keep running away from
Can't.
what has happened. You can't do it. You eventually have to. And I always explain trauma like this. God literally God made everything. He not only made your body, he made feelings, he made emotions, he made your brain, he made the hormones that secrete from them. He made everything. And everything, when it says he made it and he said it was good, meant that it had a purpose and it was working in that purpose.
Amen.
So feelings are not the issue. Feelings allow you to be present. Feelings allow, because remember, thoughts, feelings, and actions. Look at that. Thoughts can be, most of the time, our thoughts are based on the past, to be honest. But feelings are very present, right? Because they change all the time. They're so temporary. That's how present they are. They're so temporary. One moment you can be happy, and then you watch something on TV and it made you sad. Like they're very present. Um, so they allow you to. And what happens is, right? You have something that's supposed to be present, 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 right? Your body's over here, but now, what instead of it being like this, your body's here and you're all the way over here. Your feelings, your brain, your mind, everything's here. The thing with that is, regardless of how much avoidance, there's going to come a time where this is eventually going to have to catch up with your body. It's going to have to catch up with your body. And it can either happen as a instant moment, or you can slowly start to work on the steps so that you can get there. But I tell you now that trauma is eventually going to catch up with you. We are meant to be on one accord. If he wants the body to be on, if he wants the saints and the kingdom of God and people to be on one accord, when we are, when we talk about teams and companies and we want everybody to be on the same page under one vision and we want all those things, what makes you think that he designed your body to be anything other than in the same place in alignment? Right? So when you have an avoidance issue, what's happening is you're pushing back these families, and you just come on, just keep on pushing them back, and eventually it's going to happen, regardless if you like it or not. It's going to happen.
It's going to happen.
It's going to happen. So you now have to, and some people feel like it's not. Some people feel like their avoidance is working so well that it's never going to happen. I come to tell you today that is not the truth.
Hello.
It will catch up to you. Because what'll happen is either one of two things. One, you'll be so wrapped up in, avoidance and negative things. Let's say your choice is, alcohol or drugs or whatever it may be. Okay. Eventually you start to do that. Your brain deteriorates. The way you respond and your reaction to things is completely tainted. You start to pull from a very emotional place in your brain when you get addicted to things. So you're not even thinking logically. So most of the time, that's why we see most of our drug addicts in some form of jail or penitentiary. We see them there because they're making decisions emotionally. They stole this because they want to, make some money to get this, so we tend to see that, right? Or let's say yours is just working. Okay, let's say you work, and it's working for you. Okay, eventually your body needs to rest. So whether it forces you to rest, and you're sitting in a hospital bed under anxiety attack or some form of pressure or burden or something has happened to you, or whether it's just more of you cannot get up. There are some people that have been so tired that they literally lay in bed and they can't get up.
The body refuses.
They can't get up. Body just refuses. They can't get up.
I shall not be moved.
When you get dehydrated, right? When you get dehydrated, what happens? You feel like you cannot move.
My God, help us.
There's a point where you can. Some people don't even eat. You don't eat. Eventually, it'll catch up to you. It'll all catch up to you. The point is, it'll all catch up to you if you don't deal with it in a healthy way. It will always catch up to you.
No matter what.
No matter what, because God made it aligned where our past and our present and our future all align.
They all work together. They're supposed to
work together. The Bible says all things work together for the good of those that love the Lord and are called according to his purpose. They have to work together. Your past, this present, and that future that's to come, they're all working together. They're all working together. So we have to now start to encourage people to, number one, kill the stigma that therapy is not helping because it's not solving the problem. It's not, therapy is not a magic wand you wave and abracadabra, bippity boppity boo is gone. That's not how therapy works.
Bippity boppity boop.
Right. Like there's a process to this, right?
Wingardium Leviosa.
Right. Or let's get over this fact of like, okay, well, God said you're free, so you're free. Okay, so I hear God says that I'm free, right? And that's the fact that remains. But if the facts are tainted in my eyes, how is that beneficial to me? If I'm looking at something I'm not looking at the present facts. I'm not looking at the facts. Therapy usually comes to make you look at the facts, but you're not looking at the facts. You're not looking at there's a Christ that died for you.
No.
You're looking at the fact that mama didn't even love you. You think I'm going to be able to trust an invisible God? And it's not to say that some of us are not there, but the natural is we're giving people that need milk in a moment, steak. And then we're giving the people that need steak, milk. It makes no sense. So when you have someone, when they face trauma, you have to, number one, you have to be empathetic, right? You have people that are dealing with significant others, children. You have foster parents that are dealing with children that have been through some crazy trauma. They have been through complex trauma. They have been through, multiple types of trauma. They have been
all
through
of
trauma,
it.
all of it. I mean, the rap sheet is real, and it's ridiculous. And you're going through this, and you're trying to figure out, how can I be a good support? How can I be what can I do? Well, the first thing is to, number one, be empathetic. It's very important that you are empathetic. You may not understand everything. Don't feel like you know everything. Parents, do not feel like you know everything. This generation deals with things that we have not dealt with. We haven't dealt with them. I mean, we just haven't, right? In our past, I've dealt with things that we haven't dealt with. There's always something that you can learn. And if you keep yourself open, you'll understand. That's why I have a goddaughter now, so I have to make sure I stay on top. That's why I'm on TikTok trying to figure out what they're watching. I need to know the lingo. I need to know everything, because I need to know how you're communicating. I need to be able to kill the barrier. So one, make sure you're open. Make sure you are open to anybody that's going through trauma or that has gone through trauma, so that you're not kind of, in a sense, judging them or making them feel like, man, I dealt with this, so why can't you deal with it this way? No.
See, now you really touching on it, because I think we forget, you know what I mean? Like sometimes the older we get, it's like, well, I could deal with this, and why can't you? We're not all the same, and we don't all have the same level and capacity to deal with things. That empathy, I mean, that unconditional empathy that we have to have is so important to deal with it. And if someone's telling us that they're dealing with something, or if we can see something, that's not for us to like, okay, well, no. We have to like understand it. Now, there's even a balance there, because we have to balance between being full of empathy for them, but also not enabling them.
Exactly.
That's the issue too.
Absolutely.
That
and
balance.
I was going to go to that. Parents, you cannot. Okay, so number one, stay open, right? You want to stay open. The Bible tells you that one that understands a matter, he reaches success, right? So you want to understand that matter, right? Because you want to be successful as a parent, you want to be successful as a spouse, you want to be successful as a friend, whatever the role is that you play in that person's life, you want that to be successful. So yes, you want to understand the matter. All right. However, you cannot enable and you cannot change anyone. So one, it's important for not only the person that has the trauma to deal, have boundaries, but people that are dealing with people that have unresolved trauma.
Help us.
You have to have boundaries.
Must.
Because number one, showcasing that healthy boundary to them is going to be great.
We model it. We model the behavior.
You role model. What that role modeling is so important. So
wait, I want to say something really quick, because you blessed me, and I told you this personally, but I'm saying it publicly now.
Yeah.
One time we were in Florida, we were at Greater Harvest, and there was some person cutting up. I mean, cutting up. This is an older person. You know what I mean? A hat wearing, stocking wearing, slip wearing saint.
Holy.
Ya tu sabe, okay? So I'm like, okay. Now she was cutting up, attitude off the Richter scale, just wrong. And Dominique, she modeled behavior. She didn't say, "Hey, you oldie." She didn't do any of that. She didn't say a word. She let her actions do all the talking. Then when we were talking later on, she said, "You know, Steph," she said, "we're going to have to model this behavior for the older saints. And not just them, but for the younger people. We have to model the behavior that we want to see." And that's just a reality.
Absolutely. You have to model it. You know, as Christians, because I'm always gonna go here because it's just in me. What's in me gonna come out.
Come on, it's gonna
But
come
you gotta
out.
realize we're a witness for Christ, right?
Come
We're
on,
branded for Christ, right? So
Jesus.
we role model what love looks like and what faith looks like and what hope. We role model that. It's so important because we can talk all day long, but what happens is with trauma, a lot of the times is talking and action never align.
Oh God.
So now you're back in a place where now you're talking, but you're not role modeling, right? So you have, dad said, hey, don't smoke like me, don't drink like me, but you drinking and smoking. This
It's a
child,
contradiction.
this child is looking, but see, this child is looking to you as someone on a pedestal. So when you say don't do as I say and not as I do, that's really hard when as you do looks so cool. When as you do looks so amazing, right? So it's important to role model. So those that are dealing with people that friends or family members that have unresolved trauma, you have to role model that behavior. And it's I have someone in my family who maybe is in their 50s. Mom is maybe their mother is in maybe their 60s, 70s, something like that. And in her 50s, she is now coming to a place where now she is role modeling healthy boundaries because she had it in her mind that I have to continue to help this person because the Bible says to forgive and the Bible says to love, and I have to continue to be here and be submitted to this form of abuse. They're 50 something years old. So I now had to role model because this person has a that mother has a characteristic to kind of do the same things all over with anybody. So it's not just with her child. She does it with everybody. She's just a pretty manipulative, nasty person sometimes. So I had to role model what healthy boundaries looks like with this person. I still love this person, but I can't talk to you every day if you're going to be detrimental to my mind. I can't do that. I can't do that. And God, and guess what? I'm still loving you. I'm still forgiving you. I've reconciled my differences. That just doesn't mean that I have to reconnect to you. I don't have to reconnect. Not if you're not doing your part of the work to be better.
Now, you really talk about something that's very important, especially for those who are in the faith, because sometimes we feel like we have to suffer through because that's what Christ would do. No, we don't have to. We don't have to suffer the past because the Bible instructs us to use wisdom. We have to be wise in our dealings. We don't have to stay in traumatic situations or stay in abusive situations. No, that's not the way. And we can honor someone. One of the elders from my old church, Elder John Gilmore, he said he honored his father by staying away from him. If he was near his father, they would always fight. He honored his father by staying away from him, but his heart was right toward him. He didn't have negative thoughts toward his parents. He honored him by staying away. So if we're like, okay, this is what we have to do, we have to create these boundaries. And those negative boundaries that were formed in our past, from our childhood, from our families that said, oh, you have to hug so-and-so, even if you feel uncomfortable, we have got to stop doing this because it's not appropriate. Kids know. Kids and pets know. Kids, pets, babies. Listen, a baby starts crying. Now, I'm not throwing any shade. A baby whining, crying every time you pick it up. Listen, something going on. And if there's you know what I mean, pet starts barking, meowing, hissing, they know because they operate on a different frequency.
Yeah.
So they know what's going on. We have got to pay attention to what's happening so that we don't grow up or we don't raise children or we don't allow the younger people in our family to go through these traumatic situations. And then they come back to us when they're like 25 saying, you saw this happening. Why didn't you stop this? Because that's the worst thing. Because now bitterness, now we talk about what's going on. The bitterness that happens.
I mean, geez. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And see, now everything that you were trying to strive to do, now bitterness and resentment just cancels it, right?
Cancels
So
it.
so you have to have these healthy boundaries. So you have to be able to, number one, saying no to someone is not, it's not against the Lord, right? It's not against God, it's not against being good. You're not unrighteous because you say no to someone. Um I want to talk to people that feel like they have to take care of the people that have done things to them. Because we're talking about people that may have been, abused by moms and dads, and now they're getting older, and now it's like, okay, well, I have to take care of them. Even in that, there's a healthy way to even do that. There's a very healthy way to do that. You want to be able to not enable someone's behavior, because what you're doing now is, understand and think about this. If I don't say something about this person's behavior, someone along the way, because this person has not ever been challenged at all, this is bound to happen to them, to another child, to another person. If you challenge that person, not to say that they won't do it again, but at least there's something there that they can't unhear. There's some form of seed that you have planted to let them know, look, someone sees you and you're wrong. But when you don't do that and you're just, oh, it's okay, or keep hugging Uncle so and so, keep hugging Auntie so and so, you know,
Terrible.
you need to challenge those behaviors. You know what that person is doing.
Absolutely.
You know what this person is doing. You know if you have a boss that's crossing the line. You know when you have friends that are using you, using your gifts, using your love, using this, and you're not receiving anything back. You know those things. You can feel those things. And when you're present in that feeling, take a moment to breathe, because it can go one or two ways. You can either just lash out or fall back. But take a moment to really analyze the situation and then be assertive. Be very assertive. You don't have to be passive in communication nor aggressive. Assertive communication is the healthiest communication. So you want to make sure that it's very clear that this is where I stand with it. Although I understand how you may feel, this is where I stand with this situation. And everything will still be godly, everything will still be righteous. And if that person is at a level where that causes them to depart from you, then allow them to depart from you. Maybe they need that moment to
They need it.
depart. Maybe you need that. It comes to a point where even as a baby, your mom has to let go of your hand so that you can see that you can walk,
Come on.
right? You won't know that you can walk if your mom is always holding your hand and you just moving your legs, because now you're looking at the fact that, okay, mom is making me walk. You're not seeing that it's you that's making you walk. So eventually you may have to separate. You and don't feel like you can't do things on your own, because some people stay in situations because they feel like they need this person because they can't do this by themselves. I can't live on my own. I can't be, single. This is not my life. I can't do this. Yes, you can.
Yes,
Yes,
you can. You hear
you
that?
can.
Yes, you can. You are
Yes, you
enabled
can.
and you are empowered. We're doing the good enabling. We're
Yeah. Yes,
activating. We're
you
saying
can.
go ahead and go forth, because culturally, I like that you talked about that
Mm.
culturally. I'm thinking of like Chinese families.
Yeah.
Ooh, them parents are strict. I'm thinking of
Yeah. I
Haitian
want to,
families.
man,
Oh
it's true.
gosh. Ay,
Whew,
ay, ay. They're
my goodness.
strict. They
Yeah.
can't do anything in these families. And you
Yeah.
have to put your dreams on hold. Now, we're not talking about go to your family members and cut a fool. We're not saying that. But we are saying to assert yourself, because
Right.
passive aggressiveness is a result of that trauma. You learn to
Yeah.
stuff everything in, and then you sabotage certain things. You get petty.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's not healthy. We are freed and released to assert ourselves in a healthy
Mhm.
manner, and we speak up for ourselves. We don't let people walk over us. That's the boundary, where we lay down and act like a mat. No
Right.
more.
You're
No
not.
more. We are enough. We are
Yeah.
fearfully and wonderfully made. It
Yes.
is written. We look to the word to encourage
You
us
got to
and
look
to
at the
affirm
facts.
us. We have to
You
look
have
at the
to see the
facts.
facts,
There's nothing higher to swear by
man.
than the word.
I'm telling
I've been
you,
saying that God swore on the word. He swore on his own word, because there was nothing on
nothing
on
else.
earth, in heaven, or in hell. higher
Yeah.
than the word that you can swear on. So it's
Yeah.
like, this is our freedom. You know, just when you were talking, the Lord was giving me some affirmation. So I have about 5 to read, you know, just as we wrap up,
Yeah.
because we have got to be released from this thing,
Yeah.
because where God wants to take us, a lot of us have been so chained down, right? Like that ball and chain, our trauma, we've been dragging it around. Man, we're tired of that. So now our limbs are hurting and we're so fatigued because we don't have the energy that we actually need,
Yeah.
because we've been holding this weight and this baggage.
Mm.
Bag lady, we
Right.
gotta let the
Right.
bags go.
Right.
You gonna hurt your back. You know what I mean? Like
Hurt
Erica
it. I
knew
mean,
what
just
she was
break it.
talking about. Let it go, let it go, let it go, let it
Let it
go.
go.
Hello,
Yes.
somebody. We got to let
Let
it
it
go.
go.
We got to get it out of
Yes.
here, because
Yes.
where God wants to place us and the
Yeah.
blessings that He wants to give us, He
Absolutely.
will not give it to us if we are still carrying around baggage,
Absolutely.
because the future holds baggage for us
Right.
too, right?
Yeah. And
Things
we'll
are going to
mismanage it.
happen.
And
We
we'll
can manage
mismanage
it.
it.
We'll
We'll
mismanage
mismanage.
it.
Right. We'll mismanage. If God was to bless you in the past state of mind that you have, you
Father,
would mismanage
every
what
time,
He gives you
every
every
time.
single time. There's a reason why the children of Israel were in the wilderness for 40 years and couldn't get into that promise. They
And
couldn't.
it should have taken them 11 days.
Hello? 11. Did you hear
11
that? 11
days
days.
compared to 40 years. A lot
11
of us have
days.
been walking around in that wilderness, chained
11
to our
days.
past
And
based
we
on what our
use it.
mom said. We use
And
it.
we're using it.
Ah,
And we're using it as a crutch to say, well, this is why I am how I am.
help us,
This is
God.
why I don't do what I do.
Help
This
us,
is
God.
why. No, 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 no. Because if you don't want the sins of your parents to be on you, if you don't want to be accounted for those sins, then don't come on and flip the script and now say, well, because of what they do, I am what I am. No,
You
you
can't have it both
that way.
ways.
Right. You can't do that. So you're either going to be free or not. Like, that's just what it is.
You can't be
You
half
know,
free, partially free.
because God is not into partial freedom.
No, He's not.
God doesn't do that.
Ooh, Eba.
He's not into partial freedom. We may see it that way, but He's not into partial freedom, right? So when we say look at the facts, it's you're looking at the promises. You're looking at the promises. And see, now this is a whole nother thing. This is more on because when you have a word that's tainted God in a certain way, you can't see those promises.
No way.
They've tainted God. They've made your perception of God so bad. You know, they just done a horrible job. So they're painting God so bad, so you can't even see the facts. When realizing you're trying to find yourself, and you're trying to find yourself by yourself, when that's impossible. You were created by something. Just like you can learn from your past, you better find out who created you. Find out who created you, man. Find it out. But outside of that, if you don't get to that point, at least get some healing. At least talk to somebody. But God has promises for us. It's bigger than this. It's you always gotta look that there's something bigger than you, right? There's something bigger than you. God has promises for us. And if we continue to look at our past, we will not see the promises He has for us. We will not be able to perceive and receive the promises He has for us.
We can't.
He's not doing anything impartial. He's not doing
that. Absolutely. I mean, there's no way that He can do it. It's either all or nothing. Either we're going to be fully free or we're still going to be in bondage. You know, it's just a reality. You know, with the Spirit of the Lord, there is liberty. It's not half liberty or partial liberty. It's full liberty. But we have to have the courage and we have to have the strength to say, I'm really going to get free. That my past really doesn't define me. And even if I let it in the past, I'm no longer, like, every time we hear it, no matter where you hear it, those of you who are listening live, great. Those of you who hear it a week from now, tomorrow, this is the reset button. This is the restart. Like, okay, I'm identifying that I'm having this issue. I don't know where to go. Now, we've given you plenty of resources. Contact us. We can direct you to resources. There's so many resources out there. There's no excuse now with the Google and there's free resources. There's no excuse. The onus is on us, the responsibility is on us to remove that baggage, because we really cannot be launched forward. You cannot be launched if you're weighed down so much. We want to be launched into blessings, into new things, into new atmospheres and stratospheres and dimensions. And we say all these buzzwords, but we're weighed down. God said, I can't launch you. You're too heavy. And not physically, I mean, I
Right.
couldn't stand. I'm gonna start getting in the gym. I couldn't stand to do a few crunches. Yes, but spiritually, we're too way down. We're too way
Yeah.
down. He says, I can't launch you.
Yeah.
Right? I can't. Yeah, I can't. How can I
Yeah.
launch an arrow that's too way down? No way.
Yeah.
It has a chain on it. No, no, no. So this is the things to unbind ourselves from. We are going to get ready to wrap up. We've been
Yeah, I know.
rolling
I
for
know.
an
We've been
hour and a half.
rolling.
Yo, the
I
time
know.
went by so fast, sis.
I
Like, I
know.
love you. Oh my gosh, I'm so appreciative of you. Like,
Oh
seriously,
man.
when trauma popped up, there was no one else that I wanted to speak to. I know your passion for it. I
Oh
know the
man.
work
Yeah.
you've done in it and are still doing in it.
Absolutely.
I can't wait to see where that takes you. You know what I mean? Like, you speaking at conference. I'm serious. You speaking at conferences. You speaking about this because you have an understanding of it from the clinical side. But when we throw Christ in it,
Yeah, man.
it puts
The
it on a
spiritual
whole
side of this
different
that we
level.
have to take into account, man. It's
Absolutely.
crazy. So I know we're
Absolutely.
wrapping up.
We are
But
wrapping
so,
up. Any
yeah.
final words?
Yeah,
Please
let
give
me
us your
say these
final
final.
thoughts.
Yeah, let me get these final thoughts. I just
Sure.
want anyone that's watching now in the future to come. I want you to know that God has truly made you for a reason, and that reason was to give Him glory. Um, and I leave that there because we get so wrapped up in purpose sometimes, um, that we forget the main purpose is to give
My.
God glory. Whether you believe in Him or not, you're gonna see Him one day. The fact remains that you're gonna see Him. So God is in the healing business because when He says, see, it's not like us. God knows what He wants, right? I look at like women or men that they're dating, and they have all these requirements, and they don't, they have so many things. Like, I'll be okay if she's brown skin or dark skin. I'll be okay if she, got long hair or short hair. And nowadays you can wear wigs, and you can do whatever you want. So you can give somebody what they want. But see, God knows what He wants. And He says when He comes back, He wants a church without spot or blemish. And this means that if He's saying that's what He wants, He's gonna get it. So He is in the healing business. He is in the freedom business. He is in the restoration business. He is in the reconciling business. He is in the business of you being whole. He is in the business of your wellness in all ways. That's financially, that's spiritually, physically. He is in the business of you. He loves you so much. So don't take that for granted. God loves you, and He encourages and empowers you to take those thoughts captive. To take those thoughts that have held you down for so long, that continue to hold you down to now. But tonight, I believe that if there's one person that has listened, they know that they are free. And they are free because Christ already said that I am free. And that's the thing. That you're just catching up to the promise. You're not working for the promise. The promise is there. Now you just have to kind of catch up and grab it. And that's it. So I just want to leave with that, of the notion that you are free, if you want to be free. You are kept if you want to be kept.
Come on.
So that's my final remarks.
Yo, can you guys see why I have her on here? Like, she's so profound. I love her so much. Oh my
Thank you
gosh.
so
Like, the
much.
passion that's there
Yeah,
and just the
love
words
it.
that are there. That's what breaks the chains. Like, we have to
Yeah.
move past all this surface level stuff and
Yes.
get right to the root, because God needs free people.
Yes.
Free people. Just like hurt
Yes.
people hurt people.
Hey, come on.
Healed people heal people.
Come
That's
on.
a reality. So we're all
That's
getting
it.
healed together,
That's it.
and that's the reality. So before we
Yeah.
close out, I just wrote another one. I have about 6 affirmations that I'm gonna say,
All right.
and then we'll be done. Okay, so
Got
here we go. I am not my trauma. It does not define me. It does not shape me. The things that happened to me as a child no longer control me. I
it.
forgive, I release, I close the door, and I move on.
Yes.
I refuse to let my childhood trauma control my life anymore. I am free, and all the generations behind me are free.
Yes,
I am
Lord.
free and released from past hurts, shame, guilt, and fear. I will try again. I will live again.
Mm.
I will laugh again. I will love again. In Jesus' name, we
Mm.
are free. Okay, come on.
Amen.
Y'all can
Come
repeat
on.
that, rewind that, record
Man,
that.
yeah, just rewind that
Listen, keep,
back.
and this is the reality, that we have to remind ourselves of these things, because
Yeah.
when we affirm ourselves, all that negative stuff can't stay because the atmosphere is so saturated with the promises of God.
Amen.
Look, thank you everyone who tuned in. Thank you
Yes,
again, Dominique, our
of
trauma
course.
specialist. Okay, our
Thank
resident
you.
trauma
Thank you for
specialist.
having
Ow,
me.
ow. And we're gonna have her back on
Thank
different panels to
you.
talk about this because this is it. This is so important.
Yes.
Thank you to everyone who tuned in. We love you. We love you. We love you.
Thank
Be
you.
free. Go and be free. And that is the reality. So thank you. All right.
Yes.
We'll be back with another episode on something taboo. Okay. Because we're talking about it. All right. Bye, y'all.